Souvenir, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Port Washington and Manhasset. Welcome to our Candidates Forum. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Judy Estequist, who is our technical advisor, Michelle Lamberti, our vetter, Marie Bellon, our timer, and Jessica Weaver, our moderator. The League of Women Voters work to inform the community about candidates' views on issues through forums such as this and through a variety of publications. We register voters at community events. We are a nonpartisan organization, which means we never support a candidate, although we do take positions on issues after studying them. We hope you will consider joining the League, which you can do on our website, LWV of PWM. Remember, the League is not for women voters only. The budget and trustee election will take place at the secondary school gymnasium in Manhasset on Tuesday, May 18th, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you're registered to vote in Manhasset, you are eligible to vote in this election. I will now turn the meeting over to Jessica Weaver, who will be moderating this evening. She doesn't live in Manhasset, as is a requirement of our nonpartisan policy. However, she will be reading the rules and procedures for the evening. All candidates have agreed in advance to these rules. Jessica, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Here are the ground rules that the candidates agreed to prior to this forum. The moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside the district. I'm from Port Washington. Candidates' opening statements will be given in alphabetical order. The same order will be the same for opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. If there are many candidates, the moderator may limit the opening statements to 2 minutes, but this time we will have 3. After all candidates have spoken, the moderator will open the meeting with questions from the audience, submitted electronically before and/or during the forum. Electronic addresses for questions will be publicized with the forum and available on the League of Women Voters website. The moderator will be the arbiter of whether questions are appropriate, repetitive, or abusive. Each candidate will be given 1 1/2 minutes to answer each question. At the moderator's discretion, the time for a response may be reduced as long as it is the same for everyone. There will be no rebuttal. Questions may be addressed to a specific candidate or to candidates in general, although all candidates will be given an opportunity to answer any question addressed to a specific individual. The moderator will attempt to rotate the order of responses for each question. A League member will act as timekeeper. 1/2 minute from the end of any given time period, the timekeeper will warn the speaker by a prearranged signal. When the time is up, the speaker will be allowed to finish the sentence. Repeatedly speaking past the deadline may result in a candidate being muted. Candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Since the purpose of this meeting is to determine the candidate's views, no substitute speaker will be allowed to appear should a candidate be unable to attend. The use of props, charts, or visuals and the display of campaign literature is prohibited. In accordance with League policy, audio or video recording by authorized members of the media will be permitted only if agreed to by all the candidates present. The League maintains the right to record the forum and publish it on the League of Women Voters controlled electronic pages. No other recording will be allowed. No partial transcript or recording may be published without written permission from the League. And with that, candidates, you may turn on your videos and your audios. You may also choose to remain muted while other candidates are speaking. Sometimes that's preferred. Either is fine. If you, for some reason, are muted and you start speaking, look at me and I'll be tapping my ear. That means go ahead and unmute. All right. So alphabetically, Mr. Bua, please, your opening statement.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Good evening. I'm Frank Bua. As a Manhasset homeowner, taxpayer, resident, father of 6th grade twins, and active member of the community, I am excited to be a candidate for the Board of Education. I'm running to provide a fresh perspective, expand upon and enhance Manhasset's history of excellence, maintain responsible fiscal stewardship, and help our district address the many challenges that lie at our doorstep. People come to Manhasset like my family did from Manhattan for the schools. They are the foundation upon which our community is built and a source of immense pride. But I've long believed that if you're not looking to continually improve, you will find yourself constantly behind. To be frank, We have some heavy lifting to do to maintain and enhance our district. Some of these challenges are indeed COVID related, like addressing learning loss and social emotional concerns. Other challenges are unique to Manhasset, like dealing with longstanding capacity and infrastructure issues, enhancing our curriculum so that our students can become more competitive applicants to the best college and better prepare for the 21st century jobs that await them. Perhaps because I've spent my life studying and teaching history, I believe that a representative has an obligation to listen to and speak for the community, to be accessible and transparent. I approach issues with an open mind and a desire to find common ground and build consensus. I ask the questions, how do we get to where we want to be, and how do we do so together? I promise to work for constructive change that reflects the input of our entire school community. While education isn't a business, we can learn from businesses to make our school more effective, efficient, and fiscally responsible. Adaptation need not come with an increased price tag. It's been a rough year, and I think we can all agree that nothing replicates the in-school experience for our children. As a lifelong educator, I find this particularly so. Our students haven't had an authentic educational experience for over a year. This needs to change, and I call on the district to immediately reconvene reopening committees for the fall so that we can get our kids back to normal for a full academic year. As a parent, I've been involved in Manhasset from day one. I've attended almost every board meeting, participated in parent workshops, served as a parent on selection committees, and was an engaged member of last summer's secondary reopening committee. Doing what's right for kids as my only motivation. It's all about them. To me, school is more than a place where kids learn subject matter. It's where they discover who they are as individuals, where they learn to challenge and question and find their passion, whether that be in the classroom, on the athletic field, in a science lab, the music room, or the stage. Manhasset schools must be a place where all learners are valued and where nobody gets lost between the cracks. I believe my 26 years in the classroom makes me uniquely qualified for this role. Thank you for your consideration and your time. I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bua. Mr. Prinzo?
Thank you, and thank you to all of the group of the League of Women Voters. I know you guys do this every year. Typically, we see you in the black box, but it's exciting to see that you've moved on to Zoom, and the whole process is just terrific. I have to begin my opening statement with a preamble. If you live in Manhasset, you read the Manhasset Press today or yesterday. And as the only one of the four candidates who is a sitting Board of Education member, I feel it would be impossible for me not to comment on it. So I will just say a few things, and please understand that as a sitting Board of Education member, I am guided by legalities that I am not permitted to discuss in public. This is, this entire issue that was in the Manhasset Press is a personnel matter. And I personally, as one person from the Board of Education, must be cautious in what I say. So I will say that, and I'm permitted to say, that the board did receive a sexual harassment allegation from an individual. As soon as we received it, following our own policy, we immediately involved an outside counsel to do an investigation. The outside counsel was from upstate. We consciously decided not to hire a firm from Long Island. And and this all happened in months ago. And when all of this came back to us, all of the information came back to us, the board proceeded to do the recommendations and follow the recommendations that were given to us by this independent counsel and our own district attorneys, our own attorney group. So there is further discussion that will happen on this matter tomorrow at the Board of Education meeting that is scheduled tomorrow at our regular time. So that said, on to me. Let's talk about me, okay? I've been on the Board of Education for 15 years. When I joined the school district 15 years ago, we had the worst sports facilities on Long Island. We had ruts all over our fields. We had gymnasiums that were poorly lit, not in good condition. We had a theater, very bad shape. we had very few faculty advisors that were tenured employees. And over the 15 years that I've been involved with the school district, I'm proud to say we've moved far, far beyond that, to the point where today we're already discussing new fields that need to be refurbished again because they've outlived their usefulness. So in your thought process, community, please remember that, and please remember where we rank on Long Island with our education system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prinzo. Ms. Pullano?
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'm excited to be running for one of the 2 board seats available and hope that on Tuesday, May 18th, you will cast one of your votes for me. Based on my experience raising 3 children in our schools, I have learned what really makes up the high-quality Manhasset educational experience. I understand what our children need to achieve success, and I'm in touch with what parents expect from our schools. I have firsthand experience in collaborating with the community, the administration, and the school board, and most importantly, in advocating for our children. I graduated from SUNY Albany with a BS in accounting and earned my MBA at NYU with a dual concentration in finance and management. I'm a certified public accountant and worked at the Dreyfus Corporation for many years, where I held roles in corporate accounting as well as product development. In 2003, my husband Chris and I moved to Manhasset to raise our family. Our older son Matthew graduated in 2017, our daughter Nicole graduated in 2020, and our younger son Stephen is currently a junior at Manhasset High School. Since coming to Manhasset, I have been active in the school community and have always supported our students. I've served on the SCA Executive Board as both Executive Treasurer and Executive Secretary. I've also served as a room parent for each grade in the elementary school and served as a grade level chairperson at Muncie Park, the middle school, and the high school. In addition, I've held many other SCA roles, including webmaster, Muncie Park Finance Chair, Educational Grants Co-Chair, as well as served on numerous committees such as the Frolic, the SCA Fair, Staff Appreciation Luncheon, Book Fair, Photo Day, and the SCA Bylaws Revision Committee, among others. I was also a member of the Muncie Park School Safety Committee, where I worked closely with building administration and local law enforcement to ensure that our building was a safe and secure place for our children and staff. In our community, I've been actively involved with the Manhasset Women's Coalition Against Breast Cancer, serving for 4 years as a junior coalition grade level advisor for the Manhasset class of 2020. In addition, I've managed my son's U11 Manhasset soccer team, as well as his St. Mary's CYO high school basketball team. I've learned a tremendous amount over 18 years of supporting our students and working with members of our community. I've worked to ensure that our schools provide every student with the tools that they need to succeed. I have also learned that it is imperative that the community's voice is represented on the school board. I strongly believe that I am the most qualified person to be that voice, so I hope you will vote for me on Tuesday, May 18th. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pullano. Ms. Royce?
Good evening. I also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. As mentioned, my name is Erin Royce. My husband Brian and I have been residents of Manhasset for 14 years and are raising our 3 sons here. Riley's in 7th grade, Aiden is in 5th grade, and Teague currently attends Congregational Nursery School and will enroll in kindergarten in the 22-23 school year. I also have 3 nieces and nephews that attend our schools. I received my undergraduate degree from Boston College and went on to Hofstra University, where I earned a master's degree and a certificate of advanced study in school and community psychology. I began my career as a school psychologist in the Syosset School District. After the birth of my first son, I returned to work as the director of guidance at my alma mater, St. Dominic's High School. I spent 7 years there, serving them in that capacity. And after the birth of my third son, I returned to work as the coordinator of special education there. Currently, I'm a full-time mom, the most important and hardest position I've held yet. There are a number of reasons that I declared my candidacy for Manhasset Board of Education. I want to see an increase in parent representation on the board. As the mother of a child in the secondary school, elementary school, and one who hasn't even begun his academic career here yet, I represent all ages and grade levels. With my years of experience in school administration, I believe I have the background to understand the day-to-day operations of the schools and the curriculum, while also being able to maintain a parent's perspective. I want to see an increase in the flow of communication between our board and our parents of younger children. Many parents weren't even aware of the recent discussions to potentially relocate the Muncie Park kindergarten class. Discussions like these need to reach a broader depth of our families. I'd like to take a more active role in planning for changes in our schools and in articulating them to the community. In particular, a return to normalcy for our kids next year. And if that includes actively challenging decisions handed down from the county and the state, then I'm eager to do it. Manhasset has a history steeped in excellence in academics, athletics, the arts, and many other aspects of our children's lives. Thanks to the hard work of the board, our administration, the faculty and staff, and students, we are ranked among the top high schools nationally. We have award-winning music programs. We have championship sports teams. And I just watched the Broadcast Journalism Club win a first place BASH award in their first year of existence. My goal is to continue this tradition, expand the breadth of students who find success in our schools, listen to the community, and be a vessel of communication between all entities involved in our children's education. I've been asked by some people what my agenda is, but the truth is that I don't have one. Tonight, I'll happily tell you where I stand on a variety of controversial topics, and I know this community cares about. But I am running because I've spent my life being enthusiastic about education, my own, my students, and my children's. My job as a board member would be to gather as much information as possible, listen to the community I represent, and make informed decisions with the health, well-being, and the future of our students in community as the priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. BOE, the first question will begin with you. And that question is, how long have you lived in Manhasset?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I've been in Manhasset my kids are in their 4th grade here. We moved from Manhattan. And when we moved from Manhattan, it was, challenging. I had grown up on North Shore, Long Island. I'm a 3rd-generation graduate from Great Neck, and we had a lot of consideration to figure out. I also teach in Great Neck. And so as we were thinking and contemplating about making the move, we had to do a cost-benefit analysis of where the best place was for our family. And to me, it was a no-brainer. My grandfather was a 25-year postal service member in Manhasset. I grew up getting all my haircuts from 0 to 25 at Joseph on Plandome Road. May he rest in peace. And so Manhasset had always been like a backyard to me. And so it was very easy for us to kind of settle in here. One of the things that I found that was really great is before my kids even knew they were moving, I have 6th grade twins. We had driven down and visited friends down in the park. And so it was a beautiful spring day. And my daughter looks up at the trees budding and says, "Papa, this is where I want to live." And it was just like, okay, my work here was done. I was very, very happy. I'm thrilled to be here in Manhasset. And since I've been here, I've been an active and engaged member of the community since the first moment I got here. I like to participate, provide a perspective as an educator, listen to fellow community members, and compare and contrast what I see in a neighbor and sistering district to what goes on here. And so that's a unique perspective that I like, and I value it, and it gives me great insight, I think.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Can you see the timer?
I can.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I appreciate that.
No problem. Mr. Prinzo?
Yes, hi.
Same question. How long have you lived in Manhasset?
Oh, that's a really hard question. I've lived in Manhasset 26 years. Both my children, my son and my daughter, have gone through kindergarten through 12th grade. Both are graduated. I said on my webpage, my daughter went to New York University and graduated with a math and economics degree. My son went to Loyola University and graduated with a social studies degree, and now works in Washington, D.C., I'm very proud to say. So, and I feel very strongly that both my kids are where they are today, independent, almost adults, but independent individuals because of really what they learned here in Manhasset, how they grew up in Manhasset, and how that worked out for them. I think Manhasset taught them many great things. Not everything comes out of the textbook. You learn a lot of things from your friends and so on. And I think that's really worked well for them. And I wish that for every other student that comes through our doors, the 3,200 of them every single day.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano?
Thank you. We've been here for 18 years now, and we've had 3 children go through all the schools here at Manhasset. I have 2 in college right now. My oldest is graduating from this May from Cornell. We have been involved in sports, academics, the arts. My children have led many different paths through our schools and our community. But what it really speaks to is that they have really enjoyed the full Manhasset experience. And I think that's a reason why many people live here and come here. It's not only the great schools and the great education that we have, but it's the sense of community and that Manhasset spirit. And, I'm happy to have been able to provide that to them. And I'm happy to be able to provide that for the children now going through the school, because it's something that I think everybody should really benefit from and be a part of.
Thank you. Ms. Royce?
Hi, I have lived in Manhasset for 14 years. I was born on Long Island. I spent part of my childhood in England and then spent the rest of it growing up in Oyster Bay. And when I went away to Boston College, I spent 1 day a week working when I was a senior for a wonderful family up there who happened to know another family looking for someone to work for them when I graduated and I was attending grad school. I spent some time nannying for a wonderful family that still lives in Manhasset, and I was their nanny for a number of years and got to know this amazing community. So when my husband and I got married in 2006 and we're trying to decide where we could live, where he would be able to commute to Connecticut and I could maintain my job on Long Island, we chose the most obvious choice, which was Manhasset, that I had been a part of the community already and watched a family raise their children here and learned how wonderful it was. Like I said earlier, I have 3 children. 2 are currently school age. I've been involved in their sports teams. I've been class moms while working. And now that I'm home, I'm looking to get more involved in our district.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. Prinzo, the second question will begin with you. And that question is, how are you uniquely qualified to help the school district navigate a post-COVID world for our students? What sets you apart from the rest of the candidates?
That's a great question, and thank you. I think the experience that we bring to the table, that I personally bring to the table, and the current board brings to the table, is a key element here. And I don't mind telling everyone that I was with Dr. Schlanger, Dr. Butera, and Pat Aiken, our board chairperson, Monday of this week, and the discussion about what somebody termed learning loss, that discussion is very, very much going on today, right now. We all feel very strongly that the pandemic has created a gap in many of our children's education. Elementary is one of the major concerns. Certainly secondary is an issue that we're very sensitive to, but that gap is being looked at now so that we all understand. And that, that was a conversation that we had with Ms. Chowski from the English department and Lauren from our math director, to really understand what do we need to do in September to make sure that any gaps are appropriately closed and we can move forward. In addition to that, we've provided for 7 or 8 additional teaching positions in our current budget so that we can support any of those gaps with, number one, smaller class size, and where needed, individual teaching on a specific topic when needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano?
Well, so as I mentioned, I raised 3 children in the district. And every parent will tell you that each child has an individual path Just like mine, I had an accelerated student, I had an average student, I had one that needed support, I had an athlete, and I had a student in the arts. But what gives me a unique perspective versus the other candidates is that I also have 2 children in college. So I have some insight into what our children need to be prepared after high school. My son, when he had gotten to college, he realized, we were lagging. We were behind in our STEM offerings in technology. And, the good thing is that we've made changes in the last couple of years to combat that. And for example, one change is we brought the Project Lead the Way to the high school. So there are instances like this where I have a unique perspective where I can see and I can identify what issues and what gaps there are, just like the COVID learning gap that Carlo was talking about. So I hope to be able to bring that to the board and really advocate for our students to make sure that they're receiving a complete education and we can foresee all the pitfalls that they may be encountering.
Ms. Royce?
Yeah, I think that my unique perspective is obviously not as a parent, because there are 2 other parents running, but definitely the communication that I might have with parents of younger children. I also, like I said in my platform, am hoping to kind of facilitate the flow of communication a little bit better as far as the planning. I know how much work the board has put into getting our kids back into school and the planning that has gone on. And I think that kind of anticipating what is going to come next year and discussing that with the community is important. And also challenging any restraints that are put on us to open schools fully and return to normally that are handed down from the state and the county. Obviously, we have to be safe, we have to follow guidelines, but challenging those guidelines is important. If they don't make sense, then we need to push back and understand why these guidelines are in place or change them if they're not making sense. So I think that, that's something that my goal is to challenge these safeguards that are put in place to keep our children safe. But if they're not making sense, then we need to push back. So I think that I would like to see schools fully reopen and make sure that we have plans in place. If they don't fully reopen, what are we going to do about it and how are we going to challenge? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bua?
Sure. I like to think that sometimes in crisis, we have to find opportunity. And as devastating as COVID has been and we're all done with this pandemic, I think it's elucidated in us the opportunity to reimagine and reshape things, particularly schools. I mean, if we look at jobs, I don't think anybody thinks that everybody has to be in an office every day anymore. We can do it remotely. I think we've learned what works and what doesn't work for schools. COVID has exposed inequities, inefficiencies, and weaknesses, both structurally and pedagogically. It's forced us to pay attention to things like mental health. We can't just approach this in a pro forma manner. We should already have reopening committees. We should already have summer workshops to bridge the gaps of learning loss. We should already have a plan to assess precisely where learning loss has taken place and how much we have to catch up. We need to be more proactive and less reactive. As an educator, I can tell you how damaging this hybrid model has been for our students. It's a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. I see kids struggling daily. I see them addicted to their electronic devices. I see their attention spans waning. If we don't think this is going to have long-term impact on the educational structure, we are fooling ourselves. And so I hope to use my expertise as an educator to try to inform the board what's going on in the classroom so that we can really address it.
The third question, we will begin with you, Ms. Pullano. And that question is, given the superintendent's contract is expiring, will you support a new contract for Superintendent Butera if you are elected?
Well, my understanding is that it's not quite expiring yet. I believe he still has another year or 2 on his contract because it had been extended in the past, twice before. The news that broke, I guess it was yesterday or today, I'm not privy to any of the facts of the situation. But my general understanding is that an independent investigation was conducted and that the conclusions were not disclosed. but these are very serious allegations. Before we even discuss contract extensions, we need to have an understanding of really what those conclusions were of that investigation. People are very deeply concerned. They're fearful of sending their children to school. And, it's just really a very unfortunate situation that we're all in. I don't understand really even how we have gotten to this place, because this is not something that's representative of our community. But the bottom line is the community needs a clear understanding of the conclusions of the investigation so they can make an informed judgment. And, above all, our students and our staff need to feel safe when they're in our schools.
Ms. Royce.
Yeah, I agree with what Jill said. I feel that we are not privy to the details of the investigation. And so as far as the news that broke yesterday, I don't really have a comment to make. I haven't worked very closely with Dr. Butera in the past. I have exchanged numerous emails and of course seen him on the Board of Education meetings. And I do know his contract was extended, so it's not expiring. So I look forward to working with him and forming a more personal opinion of him. I will say that I think that any accusation of sexual harassment or discrimination should be taken seriously, and the board acted appropriately in having a separate investigation. And I am hoping that they did follow, as Carlo said, the recommendations. But I do think that the community will eventually need to find out the truth. And then we need to, assess how our community feels about the situation. Thank you.
Mr. BOE.
Yeah, everyone's right. This is the superintendent's contract. It's public information. His job is safe and contractually until July 1st, 2022. Listen, I only know the information that I read in the paper yesterday, like the rest of you, and it was troubling and disturbing on many levels. There's a general misinterpretation of what the role of the Board of Education member is. And because of that, I've dedicated a full page on my website, www.boa.boardofelducation.com, to focus on the role of the board. I want to emphasize that one of the most important responsibilities of a board member is the hiring and supervision of a superintendent. I have reviewed his contract and amendments, which are public, as I mentioned, and I'll add it to my website tonight for anyone who's interested in looking at it. But as a community member and parent, I can't help but go back to the question that was circulating during Watergate. What did we know and when did we know it? While I have no doubt that our Board of Education, after consult with counsel, will call this a personnel issue and resist further comment, the cat is out of the bag. And I call on the president of the Board of Education to immediately release a statement to the community on the status of the investigation, why the information was released publicly now, what disciplinary actions were taken, and what impact this will have on the future of our schools. We deserve transparency and we need answers.
Mr. Prinzo.
Hi, thank you. So obviously, based on my comments at the beginning of the session, I cannot comment on how I feel about extending Dr. Butera's contract or not extending Dr. Butera's contract. But I will add, it would seem to me that Mr. BOE, of all of the four of us, since Mr. BOE is the vice president of the teachers union in Great Neck, and he's also, I believe, a delegate to the National Teachers Union representing Great Neck, I think he would understand the term personnel that he used is a very specific item that is guided by New York State ed law and just general law. So I personally am not an attorney. I'm a business person. I'm a numbers guy, but I have spoken to enough attorneys that and our counsel at the district where I'm made to understand that there are certain things that are not discussed. So sorry, I can't answer the question directly.
Thank you, Mr. Prinzo. Ms. Royce, the next question will begin with you. The question is, what is your position on fully opening schools, i.e. as they were in September 2019?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, obviously I want schools to reopen exactly the way they were before this pandemic hit. I have 3 children. I have a younger son who ended up with an infection from his mask. the hybrid model did not work for my older son. He is much happier being in school every day. And I want our decisions to be made given data. I understand that there has to be a following of safety precautions, and we can't just throw out the window any safety guidelines that are handed to us by the entities that govern above our school. But I also think that if we aren't going to be guided to reopen fully next year, then we need to push back as to why. There is little evidence as of right now that there has been spreading of this virus when the kids are in school wearing their masks. And I know contact tracing is something that's a very important topic right now. And I'd like to know where the evidence is that we need to do that. There's been a lot of discussion amongst us and other school boards as to why this is making sense. So I think it's important that we question these tactics, and I'm all for trying to fully reopen in the fall.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. BOE?
Sure. I also believe that we need to fully reopen in the fall. I think that we've learned a heck of a lot about COVID. The information on the ground seems to change every day. But what we're learning is that the virus doesn't really pass if you're wearing a mask and have appropriate social distance. And that distance is adapted from 6 feet to 3 feet. I think we're also learning that the virus doesn't travel or transmit quite effectively on surfaces. So, what we thought about the virus a year ago is quite different. And as we learn more, as the science has become more transparent, as the government is catching up to the science, I think we as a school district, as a county, as a state, and as a country have to catch up to that as well. And sometimes bureaucracy stalls things. COVID's not over. It's taken serious tolls. I have literally lost both of my grandparents to COVID this year. I have 2 people in my home that have asthma. So we don't mess around with this virus, and I'm under no false pretenses that it's over. But I think that what we've learned in the past year is that we can adapt and adjust as the science changes. And I think we need to. And I think we've also learned the incredible damage to our students through the hybrid model and their need to have that in-person contact in the class, both with their teacher and with their peers.
Mr. Prinzo?
Thank you. I fully expect, certainly based on what we've been hearing lately from the CDC, that we will go back to school in September. Certainly things will happen over the summer that will impact that with COVID, but it is our goal as of right now that we are back to school in September as per normal. Since September, certainly in March of last year, we had a very bad time. But I must say we were able to quickly get organized, get our remote teaching organized. School districts, and I'm sorry, I'm not bashing, but I have to be honest, other school districts like Great Neck refused at the teacher level to do any remote synchronous learning. They refused to go remote. Well, wow, that meant they had no school for March, April, and for a long time after that. We were able to get our remote learning up and running very quickly. And in September, we were able to do this hybrid model. We are now at the point where every child who wants to come back to the classroom can be in the classroom. Their parents, for sports reasons or for AP reasons, have chosen to keep their kids remote because they don't want them to be infected. We respect that. The tools are there. The remote learning is there. Use it. It's a perfectly workable system.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano?
So positivity rate is down. The vaccination rate is high. Vaccinations are widely accessible. Every day there's an easing of restrictions. The governor even announced last week that the state fair will be taking place this summer. There's no reason why our children can't be back in school. I don't think school policy should be more restrictive than the Department of Health requirements. And as far as I know, they're not. If there are Department of Health guidelines that are not in our students' best interests, we should advocate for our students. But the bottom line really comes down to the COVID learning loss, as we had spoken about before. The good thing is our proposed budget has many provisions to support our students. Although Mr. BOE sounds like he may not be familiar with all of them, there is summer support allocated in the budget. There's a lot of support at the elementary level, smaller class sizes, for example. There's also support at the secondary school level. But what I would like to see is a bit more support given at the secondary level, because the good thing is we have provisions in the budget for contingencies, and we are prepared that if we do require more support at the secondary level or even at the elementary level, we have the resources to accommodate that. But the bottom line is the answer can't be that parents need to hire private tutors, and I think we're prepared for that. So that's good.
Thank you, Ms. Pullano. The next question will begin with you, Mr. Bua, and the question is, where do you stand on continuing to keep our children in masks at school?
Yeah, so first I just wanted to say that I think Carlo's a little confused. I think he doesn't think he's running for the board. I think he's running against Great Neck. I don't understand that, but I'm going to stick in my lane, and I'm going to run for something, not against something. In terms of masks, I'm not a doctor. I don't even pretend to be a doctor. I love reading about COVID. There's a lot of information about it. And it seems to me that the science says that masks are incredibly effective. Now, the news again is changing on the ground. As I've mentioned, we could, as soon as tomorrow, find out that the federal government has approved Pfizer for 12 to 15-year-olds. And then each of us are going to have to make a decision as parents about whether or not we want to, give our kids this vaccine. But depending on the vaccination rates, I think once we as a society get to a critical mass where we have herd immunity, masks will become less important. All right, now I think we have 54% of adults that have at least one shot, but kids under 16 don't have any. And so we're not there yet. So until we're at a point where we can get closer to herd immunity, until we can get the virus under greater control, in spite of the fact that I want to see my kids' smiling faces in class, and I find that the mask is a shield, both literally and metaphorically, I think the science indicates that it's the best preventative measure until we get herd immunity.
Mr. Prinzo?
Thank you. Listen, I got both my shots months ago, and I wear my mask outside of my house every day. I was at school the other day, I had my mask on the entire time I was there. I think the mask is something that will be with us for a very long time. And I get it. I think the precautions that we've learned to take are very important, and we must continue. There is this very difficult, and anyone that gets on the Board of Education will learn this real quick. There's this very difficult world that floats somewhere between what the CDC says, what Nassau County Health Department tells us, and then what Albany tells us through the school district, through the school district main office. So there's three opinions that are always coming at us. And people say, make up your own minds. Well, like someone said, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I see Fauci wear a mask one day. I see Biden wear a mask the other day. And then now for the past 3 days, Biden has not worn a mask. So I don't know what the right thing to do is. So, this is a very ugly health issue. We don't need to play with it. If the mask is going to save us, which apparently it's done all this time, I'm for wearing the mask. Thank you.
Ms. Pullano?
Well, the good news is, so far, there have been no outbreaks linked to school spread. As I said before, positivity rate is low, vaccination rate is high, vaccinations are widely accessible. I think this could possibly be a case where the Department of Health guidelines may not necessarily be in a student's best interest, especially with the warmer weather coming, children playing sports now. Masks have disadvantages also. So I think the good thing is that now, with other areas of the country opening, we have more information about the efficacy of masks. And this information needs to be considered. Decisions can't be made in a vacuum. We have the information available now. We need to use it. We need to make smart decisions and advocate for our children. They need to be safe. They need to be healthy, but we need to be smart about it.
Thank you. Ms. Royce?
Yeah, I agree. I would love to send my children to school without a mask, and I would love for them to be able to smile at each other. But I do think that we have to abide by, guidelines that are given by the Department of Health and by doctors. I think that as the summer goes on and we see more data coming out, like Jill said, about school spread, about the efficacies of masks, I am praying that by the time we get to September, we will be allowed to make a personal choice about sending our kids to school with a mask if some parents choose to get their children vaccinated or more of the adults are vaccinated. But really, until we are handed the data that, this is a healthy and safe choice for our kids, then of course we have to abide by the Department of Health guidelines. But as I said, I think we need to continue to ask, is this data driven? Are these decisions data driven?
Thank you. Mr. Prinzo, the next question begins with you. And that question is, where do you stand on only letting COVID vaccinated children into certain activities and excluding those who are not, even for medical reasons?
I need to understand more about that. And we have a panel of doctors who happen to be people that live in Manhasset who have been very supportive of all of our medical questions. And most of these 7 or 8 people have children who are in the Manhasset School District, and they've come together as medical professionals. 3 of them are pulmonologists, by the way, which is kind of an amazing thing, have come together to really help us interpret some of these regulations. So my first reaction is, I don't think we need to have, it kind of begs the question of the vaccination passport. And, I'm not a person that advocates in the world in general vaccination passports. But quite frankly, I'm open to understanding what the guidance is. This whole concept of being vaccinated and not being allowed to enter into venues unless you're vaccinated, that whole concept is really kind of fresh and new and hasn't been vetted to a great degree. There's been no guidance from state education on that to this point, and nor has there been any guidance from Nassau Health Department. So I'm kind of have to be in hold mode until more information is available on the topic. Thank you.
Ms. Pullano.
I have to say what Erin had just alluded to in her last comment really resonated with me, and she talked about personal choice. The vaccinations have only been approved on an emergency basis. They're not fully approved by the FDA. They've not been tested in children. Like I keep saying, the positivity rate is falling. Adults have widespread access to vaccinations. No outbreaks have been linked to the school spread. I cannot envision a scenario where it can be mandated that children receive the vaccine given all of these circumstances. I think it's a very personal choice, and the children's health needs to be decided upon in conjunction with their own personal doctor and their parents, and that's what needs to be the driving force in this decision.
Ms. Royce.
Yeah, like I stated, think it's a parent's personal choice to decide whether or not they should vaccinate their kids. There is a lot of information out there. I have many friends who live in this district who are doctors, who I know are excited about the possibility of having their students vaccinated. And I have many friends who are petrified about having their students vaccinated for different reasons. And I don't think at this point, personally, I would feel comfortable telling a parent they had to have their child vaccinated because I don't really think that there has been enough time for us as parents to weed through all the information. So I would be uncomfortable mandating anyone to have their child vaccinated for COVID-19 at this point.
Mr. BOE?
Yeah, listen, the vaccine isn't mandatory and it shouldn't be. It's too new. And I understand the concerns of many parents about the speed at which the vaccine was brought to market. I made a personal choice right away. The first day that educators could get the vaccine, I got it. I got lucky and kept on hitting that refresh button. But I had done a lot of reading on it. I'd read the clinical trial studies. And so I felt like I was making an informed decision for myself. I think there's a lot of unknown for kids. And I think parents have to make a family decision on what's best for them. And we have to respect that. The balance between liberty and security in our country has been a long-going conversation since the time of Ben Franklin, and it will continue to be. But as long as masks work, and they do, I don't see why anyone should be concerned about the vaccination being made mandatory. Nobody at the federal or local level has even approached that as an idea.
All right. Ms. Pullano, the next question begins with you. And that question is, currently Manhasset is one of the only districts in this area to allow its teachers to tutor within the district. Many believe this is a clear conflict of interest. Do you agree? And if you do agree, will you commit to changing this policy if elected?
This issue, I can't believe somebody asked this. This issue has been near and dear to my heart for many years now. We have an amazing school district. We have amazing teachers and amazing resources, and our students should not need outside tutoring. Everything that they need, they should be able to get from their teachers if they're being taught properly. You know, there are times when my children do need help, and I'm not going to get a tutor. They go to office hours. They schedule time to meet with their teachers. But I have to say, and this is pre-COVID, the year before COVID was really the first time when my son was unable to schedule office hours. And that is because their teachers had preset tutoring appointments that they needed to go off and attend. We need to make sure that our children have access to their teachers when they are free. Sometimes in the morning, the teachers are unable to meet. In the afternoon, they're unable to meet. If you don't have a free period, when the teacher has a free period, it's very difficult to schedule the time. Now, we want our teachers to be happy. We want our teachers to be able to earn a living, but we need to find a balance. It needs to work for both the students and the teachers. And again, like I said, with the COVID, the answer cannot be go and find a tutor. We need to come up with a solution that works for both the students and the teachers, for everybody, because we all, I think, have the same goal in mind, and that is to make sure our children receive the best education they possibly can.
Ms. Royce?
This was a hot topic at one of the schools I previously worked in. And to be honest, I was staunchly opposed to teachers tutoring our own students. They are friends with each other. They talk about what's going to be on the test. It could be beneficial to them to help their students they tutor understand what's coming on a test. And it really did not sit well with me. However, upon talking to the teachers and some of the parents who really fought for it, we came to an agreement that teachers would not be allowed to tutor students that are taking any of the subjects they're teaching. So for example, if you taught algebra, you were not permitted to privately tutor another student, even if they were in a different algebra teacher's class. And that was sort of a compromise we had come up with. And I felt for me at the time that it was fairly satisfactory. I agree, I'm astounded by the amount of tutoring privately that goes on in this district by parents, whether it's, by a teacher in our district or not. This year was very difficult to reach teachers for extra help. Some of them were wonderful and some of them could not do it. So I ended up being a parent that hired a tutor, and I'm hoping that next year we're able to find a better way to provide the extra help, or so-called office hours, where we can alleviate some of the need to do this.
Mr. BOE?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. The issue about tutoring is a real one. I've heard about it over and over again at some of the many in-person meet and greets that I've been a part of in the last 2 months as I've been doing my listening tour in Manhattan, and people's concerns are real. The perception of conflict is real, and we all know that sometimes the perception of reality can be more powerful than reality itself. One of the things that I try to do when you have a controversial issue like this is to get all parties together, do a lot of leading by listening, and try to get some buy-in and try to find a happy medium. I don't pretend that my district has all the answers. There are things that Manhasset does that are far superior than Great Neck. But in Great Neck, about 15 years ago, the same issue came up, and the Board of Education developed a policy, which is one of the board's major functions in policy, where teachers could no longer tutor students in their building or on a particular side of the district to simply avoid the conflict of interest. Now, Great Neck is divided into North and South, so that's a little bit easier. But the concept of a teacher not being allowed to tutor a person in his or her building, I think, is a good one. It avoids the perception of ethical conflict. It avoids any kind of idea of impropriety. Teachers are ethical people, and I think that they would want to avoid that as well. So I think there is a solution here, that one that could be found if we get everybody to the table to talk about it.
Mr. Prinzo?
Yes, that is a great question, by the way. And, I will add, it's an old question, and Jill might relate to this the most since she has kids in college, where this tutoring thing really seems to become very, very difficult and very, very arduous, is as kids get higher into the grades, and now we're faced with SATs and APs and all of that, every parent is looking for that little modicum of an advantage that they can use. And sometimes the outside tutors and all of those services that are available become the vehicle for that. So in the upper grades and, certainly junior, senior, just before SATs, so on, definitely an issue. I quite frankly think that's outside of the hands of the school district, and the parents are really in the driver's seat on that, and how they wish to proceed is how it's going to go. At the lower level, we certainly have a procedure, to Mr. Bua's point, where we don't allow teachers in, if I'm a math teacher, if I'm an algebra teacher, I'm not going to tutor a child in algebra who's in the class next door to me with a different teacher and so on. That procedure has been a longstanding process that we're involved with in Manhasset. And, except for this year, the COVID year, I would hope that every teacher is available on certain days to speak with their students during office hours.
Ms. Royce, the next question begins with you. And that question is, do you think school board members should be independent of the teachers union?
I'm not really sure what the question is asking in particular. I don't know that a school member would be a member of its own teachers union. If you're talking about another teachers union, whether or not I think if it's a conflict of interest, I think that we have to trust the people that we elect. And if you trust them to do a good job and to be impartial, then you're putting your faith in them that they're going to do that. I think that being an educator comes with an understanding of how schools work. But I also know that when you're negotiating contracts, then you have an understanding that maybe other people don't, which can be an advantage or a disadvantage. So, I'm not really going to take a stance as far as whether I think if it's a conflict of interest if somebody who's running is on a teachers union. I don't think that any of us would ever be in the Manhasset teachers union unless I'm misinformed. And that's where I stand.
Mr. Bua. Mr. Bua, you're muted.
I see that now. Thank you. I'm glad you brought this up. There have been a lot of false statements made online that I'm not eligible to serve on the Board of Education because of my role as an educator and a member of a local union executive board. Let me just be very clear. According to New York state law and the Manhasset Union Free School District, my background and experience provide no barrier or conflict of interest in serving as a member of a board. Not only is my experience in Great Neck not a problem, it's an asset. Who better to serve on a Board of Education than an educator? As a parent and taxpayer in Manhasset and a teacher in Great Neck, I'm uniquely qualified to address the educational issues faced by our community. My sole desire has always been just to create the best possible educational opportunities. I consistently spend my capital to build bridges and find common ground. My friends effectively refer to me as the great negotiator, and I believe that compromise is necessary and a dying art that needs to be employed with greater frequency. Just last March, when COVID turned our world upside down, I got on a call with Great Neck's superintendent and Great Neck's board president on a Sunday night at 9:30 and helped in an hour and a half to develop a plan to get our students back to virtual learning. In fact, truth be known, we were the first school district on Long Island to pivot to remote learning. 7 weeks later in Manhasset, my fifth graders at the time were still only getting an hour of education a day. I feel like if I were on the Board of Education of Manhasset, speaking the language of teachers and understanding that, I could have gotten us a better resolution. And I think that's important. Now, it's easy to label and stereotype and dismiss people and say, oh, everyone in the union, they're this or that. I get that. It's clickbait. But we're role models and community members, and we have a responsibility to do our homework and judge people based on who they are, how they live their lives. And
I'm sorry, Mr. Bua, but the stop sign has been up for a while.
totally fine.
Mr. Prinzo. Mr. Prinzo, you're muted.
Oh, restart the clock.
Done.
Thank you. I know Mr. Boo is going to take my comments as a personal attack. I've never met Frank in person. We've been on a number of committees over the summer together, so please don't take this as a personal attack. But as somebody who's been on a school board for 15 years, I very strongly believe there is a separation between the teachers union and the school board, certainly in an adjoining school district, certainly where the council, the attorneys that represent Great Neck are the same attorneys that represent Manhasset. Certainly when the attorney that represents the Great Neck Teachers Union is the same attorney that represents Manhasset. That's a real problem. I don't know how you're the vice president of a union and you sit at the negotiation table, which we are doing right now in Manhasset, and not look at what's going on in the neighboring district. In addition to that, in Manhasset today, right now, we're attempting to terminate a teacher. You don't just fire a teacher in the SED world in New York State. You have to bring them up on charges. There's a mini trial that happens. It's called a 30-28 process. The function of the union is to support that teacher. The function of the board is to support the students. How do you deal with that? There's a huge conflict here. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still yapping.
Ms. Pullano.
So both of these gentlemen brought up some excellent points. Mr. Bua enlightened us with what the law is, and that's very helpful. Mr. Prinzo showed us, some of the nuances. I think what's most important here is that the appearance, we need to consider the appearance, and there needs to be no conflict in fact and also in appearance. And I think parents and the community need to know and need to be confident that the student's interest is what comes first and that there's no other agenda. So, it's a very tricky situation. Thank you.
Mr. Bua, the next question begins with you. And that question is, what is your specific agenda to address and support diversity in the Manhasset schools?
Diversity has become a charged and loaded term, but as long as America has been a country, we've been a diverse country. We're a nation founded by immigrants. And so maybe some of the countries that our immigrants come from have changed throughout time, but I think our diversity is an incredible strength and asset. I get that some people are scared by change. It can be intimidating. We like things to be a certain way, and as we get older, we get more accustomed with things being a certain way. But I find that as our community gets more diverse, I think it becomes more robust. I think we learn a lot by listening to each other and by experiencing each other. One of the things that I did when I first moved to Manhasset was I started a blocktail party. I looked across the street from my front yard and my backyard and invited everybody from any home that I could see. and we broke bread together and had a few cosmopolitans. And so, we couldn't be more diverse. We come from all different backgrounds, and that diversity includes political diversity and ethnic diversity, and includes economic diversity. And we're all friends because we all have something in common. We all want the best interests for our students and our children. We all want to share this community together. And I think if you build on that foundation, not a foundation of hatred, but a foundation of mutual respect and understanding, I think the world is our oyster.
Thank you. Mr. Prinzo?
Hi, so diversity is something that we talk about, believe it or not, quite a bit. So just some stats. In Manhasset, 17% of our population is Asian. We had a very robust Black population in Manhasset. It has shrunk dramatically. I think it's under 2% right now. And our Hispanic population, which was under 1%, has moved up into the almost 7 or 8% range, okay? And we also know that we have invested a lot of teachers in English as a second language courses, because we see a lot of students who come to us and don't speak English, and we need to deal with that. So we need to deal with that, teach them how to speak English, but also support them as they come out of each classroom. So having a diverse faculty now, and the point of that is to say the diversity of our population, it is what it is. The students that come are the students that live here. There's not much we can do about that. The diversity of our faculty is something that we look at very strenuously and attempt at, as we move through each position, to bring forward people who represent diversity to our students and bring that cultural diversity to the table as well. So, that fortunately or unfortunately, when you live on Long Island, there is a very limited population. So we do our best to manage our way through that with the people that come to accept different positions.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano?
So the best thing that we can do for our students is enable their success. We need to teach them how to set aspirational goals. We need to provide them with the tools to enable that success. And the best way to empower them is to give them the best education that they can possibly get. We need to be able to provide examples of and model successful behavior. We need to teach critical thinking, self-advocacy. We need to hire the very best teachers that we can hire that will inspire our students to learn and to grow and to succeed. Each of our children and students has individual goals and capabilities. We need to have multiple pathways for our students to pursue so everybody can be successful and attain the goals that they define for themselves. We need all of our students to reach their full potential. We need to be a lever for success, not a barrier to success. That's how you empower everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Royce?
Could you just repeat the question so I'm sure I understand it correctly?
The question was, what is your specific agenda to address and support diversity in Manhasset schools?
Okay, as Carlo stated, the students that attend our schools are the students that attend our schools, and we are lucky to have diversity amongst our population. I think that we need to continue to encourage our students to learn about diverse populations. I think that we need to continue to include faculty members that come from different backgrounds. And I think that we need to be able to support students that learn on all levels and have different variations of support and resources at home. We are a district that has students that have little resources at home and students that have every resource available to them that could be paid for. So we need to find a way to service all those populations as far as academic achievement is concerned. I also think that, the high school is introducing new history courses to promote understanding diverse populations and the role that history has played in where they are today. And I know that curriculum is probably going to come up at some point on this phone call. And so, I think it's important that we keep having community discussions about these things and understanding how our community feels and how we can continue to implement these things in our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Prinzo, the next question begins with you. What is your opinion of critical race theory? Should Manhasset apply for CRT grant funding?
Amazing that those two questions worked very well together. There's been a lot of noise about CRT, critical race theory, on the assorted websites, Facebook and so on, in the past couple of days. I have to start by saying there has been no discussion in Manhasset about adopting a critical race theory curriculum. None whatsoever. We do offer a course. We're offering it this year. I think someone mentioned it. We're offering it this year for the first time. It's really a diversity-oriented course. It speaks to the different groups, and how they came about and so on a cultural level. So far, I think we have 14 students who have applied to take that course. So if all 14 show up, we will in fact offer it. But back to critical race theory, there is no movement on the part of state ed to force the issue of critical race theory on any school district in the state of New York as of this time. So we may have to cross that bridge when we come to it. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I need to see what the curricula is. What are we teaching? What is it about? And understand that and make our decisions. We would make our decisions in Manhasset based on what the curriculum is and so on. So at the moment, there is no discussion about CRT.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano.
So for those who don't know, critical race theory, the objective is to fight racism, but it's to fight racism by adding more racism. And it's the underpinning of a political movement, neo-Marxism. My opinion is that what we really need to do is focus on what unites us and not what divides us. We all have a common goal. We want our children to be healthy and happy. And we need to focus on providing our students the best education that we can provide for them. Like I said before, they need to be empowered. That's the best thing that we can do to help all of our students. We need to help them to be strong, empathetic, mindful, productive. They need to be able to think, have independent thought, and to apply critical reasoning and to make informed judgments. Like I said, it all comes down to empowerment. And when you educate the students, that's the best thing that you can do for them. Thank you.
Ms. Royce?
Yeah, this has been a topic I've discussed with many parents already. I believe the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Committee is going to play an incredibly important role in shaping the future of our district. I'm thrilled the high school proposed a new class next year titled History of Equity and Social Justice to help the students think about the standpoints and views of marginalized people. I want our children to learn history through different lenses, to understand decisions that were made that resulted in oppressing different populations. And I want them to learn a sense of social responsibility to help contribute to bringing true equality to our country. What I don't want is my child to sit in a classroom and feel guilty about things that have happened before he was born or decisions that were made before he was born. And so of the research I've done, I feel that critical race theory is a more divisive curriculum than I would like to see put in our schools. And so at this time, I don't think I would support the schools, applying for a grant for critical race theory. I don't think it's been a discussion in our school district yet, except among the parents that feel very strongly about it. I think that there has to be continued discussion on how we're going to move forward as a nation and as a community together. But I don't know that that is the answer.
Mr. BOE?
Sure. Ever since an editorial from the New York Post started making the rounds on social media last week, questions have been popping up about critical race theory in any forum that I've been at. And I can't say that I learned much about it before, but I've done some homework. So whenever I hear anything that's concerning or controversial, I do what I teach my students to do in social studies: analyze the sources and follow the facts. So here's what I found. Critical race theory is an intellectual theory that's been apparently floating around the university scene since the 1980s. It's nothing new. As Carlo said, our Board of Education has never entered or discussed these issues and shows no inclination to do so. Importantly, I think it's important, all of us should realize that a local Board of Education doesn't create curriculum. The New York State Department of Education and the Board of Regents determine a curriculum. Also, I think we should note that the federal government plays a very minimum role in education, which is why this is being proposed like a grant program, much in the way that Race to the Top was a grant program. I don't see the relevance of this issue for a local Board of Education election unless you really want to kind of instill some fear in people or use it as a wedge issue to divide the community. I just don't think it relevant or necessary. For those who are interested in learning more about it, there is a draft guideline that's posted online. I've read the 4 pages, and the federal government allows you to comment up until 5/19. So we have 2 weeks to comment on that draft. So if you're really interested in this issue, even though it's not relevant for us, I'll put that on my website tonight, and you can file it out.
Thank you. Ms. Pullano, the next question begins with you, and that question is, do you believe in the 2%, do you believe the 2% cap on school tax levy is a good thing for our schools and our community?
Well, I think it's good in that it really helps to promote fiscal responsibility. This year, the tax cap for our school district is 1.6%. Our budget's well within the tax cap. It's a tax levy of $92 million. And the good thing about the budget is it maintains all of our existing programs and also provides additional support to overcome the COVID learning gap. We still have reserves that are available to us. So, what makes the tax cap effective is that it makes you really consider every dollar that you want to spend, and you use it judiciously and wisely. I have an accounting background, so I have full appreciation of that. And I do support it, and I'm glad to see that our budget this year is within the tax cap.
Ms. Royce?
Yeah, I do agree with what Jill has to say. I believe that it does. I mean, the simple answer is that it keeps you in check. It keeps you fiscally responsible. I think that the board and the administration did a great job in preparing this year's budget. I watched the budget presentations and was happy that they are maintaining all of the programs and they are maintaining smaller class sizes in the elementary school because of what happened last year. I think that going forward, there has already been discussion, as Carlo mentioned earlier, about our fields and our facilities and the improvements that need to be made. And that is also an important discussion. But again, there has to be some way to keep us in check as far as what we were spending. And I know that there's an older population in this district that is concerned about the taxes that we pay for our schools. So I have to say that, I agree with the limit.
Mr. BOE?
Yeah, sure. I think fiscal responsibility is critical. And I think our board has worked really hard to be fiscally responsible. Last year, we had excess expenditures of about $4 million for COVID, and the district was able to absorb that with unencumbered funds and by tapping into the reserve. I think the cap makes you think twice about expenditures. And I think before the cap, districts were pretty free-flowing with their expenses at the cost of the taxpayers. So I think it instills in board members a necessity to do a cost-benefit analysis and to determine collectively with the community what our priorities are. I understand our district tried to violate the tax cap maybe about a decade ago, and that didn't go over too well. You have to know the community that you have and reflect their priorities. I was at a meet and greet a couple of weeks ago, and a real estate agent mentioned that we have a great value in our taxes in Manhasset. Now, when my tax bill comes, believe me, the first thing I don't think is value. I think, but I recognize compared to a Jericho or that our taxes are lower. But I think that our community wants the best education at the best possible value, and I think we deserve that. As a taxpayer, I get that, and I think the cap goes a long way towards that goal.
Mr. Prinzo?
Hi, so I feel like the fossil here. So I will say that I was around before the tax cap was a law, and it was very easy to put a budget together. You just put the budget together. Once the tax cap happened, and quite frankly, 2 or 3 years before the tax cap, we imposed our own tax cap in Manhasset, and we stayed at 2%. And since the tax cap, we've followed the rule. The issue becomes kind of not one half of the budget that we proposed, one half of it is payroll. We're a people business, teachers, maintenance people, nurses, it's payroll. There's no machines that you buy once and it's done. So that payroll expects a raise every year. That payroll has a contract that has a raise built into it every year. So every year we have to play that little game that says, how do we squeeze the 3% increase or the 2% increase that this group wants and our 1.6% tax cap? It's a lovely mathematical, to Jill's point, it's a lovely mathematical little conundrum that we go through every year. But luckily it's worked, and luckily we've been able to add the teachers for the COVID gap and so on this year. And quite frankly, as long as the biggest driver, which is the healthcare and the retirement funds, stay in check, which is done by the state, we're usually good to go. Sorry.
You can see the sign though, right? It's not.
Yes. I wasn't too bad.
Question 12, beginning with you, Mrs. Royce. And the question is, for the candidates running for a new seat, what policy decision of the incumbent board would you have voted differently on?
To be honest, I don't have an answer for that. I have been a recent participant in the Board of Education meetings. I feel like there is a lot of discussion that I have not been privy to. And part of the reason that I agreed to run is because I was tired of hearing stories about what people thought went on. And, I wanted to take a more active role in what was happening. There are decisions that were made during COVID that I might not necessarily agree with that the board backed. But as of right now, I'm not particularly concerned with a single policy that the board has set where I would be willing to say that I would strongly disagree.
Mr. BOE.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a loaded question. It's very hard for me as an outsider. I mean, even though I've been active in the board meetings for the last 4 years, it's hard for me to say that I would do something differently, but I don't have access to the information that the current board has. A lot of that is confidential. I know they do a lot of deliberation behind scenes and present a united front to the community. So it's difficult to say what I would do differently. I think what was frustrating for me, and if you were on the calls for the Board of Education last March, was the lack of clear communication coming from the board in terms of what was going on. There was talk that we had this plan and then we didn't have a plan, and it just took so long to get to where we eventually got. And where we eventually got was a better place, but it took about 7 weeks. So listen, part of that's COVID, and you can't blame the board for that. I think that's unfair. But part of it is, being responsive and listening to the community and trying to get your finger on the pulse of where we're at. And the community was speaking pretty loudly that what was happening in the schools wasn't enough to meet the social, emotional, or academic needs of our kids. So I don't know if that's a policy or not, but that's certainly something that I was quite vocal with on the board calls, and certainly something that I took affront to.
Mr. Prinzo.
Hi. Like Erin hit the nail on the head. That's a really tough question, okay? Because if you're talking about policy that the board enacts is driven by the state of New York. That policy comes to us, we make it work for Manhasset, and then we vote on it and adopt it as a policy. It is our policy that we do not discriminate. That's a policy. The DACA is a policy. There's a lot of pieces to that. But when you're talking about procedures and the nuts and bolts of running a school district, somewhat similar to what we went through this past year and change with COVID, that's different. There are positions that we take related to COVID, how we want the school district to run, how we want to run our days with the students. Quite frankly, before we can run our day with the students, we need to make sure that the teachers' union's in agreement with that. I must say, our teachers' union has been stellar in supporting everything that we've needed to do. There have been times where the technology needed to catch up to what we needed to do, or we ordered 100 cameras and only 20 showed up. Well, there's a problem, okay? And you all remember that we had to delay school a week in September. We had to delay it because we didn't have the pieces that we needed to make it work. So that's a very tough question, and I hope that answers it, but I'm not sure where that question was going. Thank you.
Ms. Pullano?
Yeah, I think Mr. Prinzo is right. It's a tough question because I think by and large, the board does its best to really advocate for our students, and there might be times where not everyone will agree. I'll give you an example. So we talked earlier about tutoring. The current policy allows teachers to tutor, and that's fine. Like I said, teachers need to make a living also. But neighboring school districts bar teachers from tutoring students in their own district. Now, that might be a compromise. Is that a solution? I don't know. It's certainly something that's worth further discussion. Like I said, it's a balance between students and teachers, and I think there's a solution there. I wasn't privy to the deliberations at the time. I'm sure they were well thought out. But that's an example of something that I might not necessarily agree with, but I also wasn't privy to all the information. But like I said, I think by and large, the board does its best to really try to balance competing objectives. But there are some instances where I think we could probably do a little bit better. Thank you.
All right, second to last question, candidates, beginning with Mr. BOE. Question is, to what degree should our schools be monitoring and acting on what students put on social media?
Yeah, so we hear a lot about security and safety, and it's changed a lot since I was a kid. We did fire drills when I was a kid, and now they're doing active shooter drills. So the world is evolving. It's becoming a fast-paced place, and our kids are exposed to all types of things that we were never exposed to before. This is scary as a parent. It's concerning as an educator and as a community member. And so there are laws that guide what we're supposed to do and what we can't do. I recognize that if a student's social media post relates to another student, and then the district has under its umbrella the authority to do some suspensions and to provide some discipline. But I think we have to start with education. I think education is the answer to everything. And I think we have to educate parents very clearly about the risks of social media. I think I can speak for myself. My kids have been on their devices so much more during COVID because it was the only way that they could kind of communicate with their friends, particularly in the beginning. But when you give them those privileges, they come with responsibilities and risks. They come with exposure. And I think one of the things the district can do is do a great education campaign, both for parents and students, to let them know about the risks that they're taking, and that while technology does open up doors, it also exposes us to great problems. And so education could be a great opportunity for us to have a conversation.
Mr. Prinzo?
I think the parents are the driver of this, okay? Yes, there are monitors to social media and so on. And in the situation where a student is potentially talking about doing harm to another student, or there's a harm issue involved, then I feel that everything is available, and everything that we need to do, we do. Because if there's a situation that we can stop, that's very important. We need to do that. But the key in all of this is not the school. The key is the parents. It's the family unit. The parents need to monitor their own children. The parents need to understand, what is my 14-year-old doing for 5 hours at a clip on a specific night? The parents need to be involved in this process. And I think there's somewhere in the middle, there's a collaboration between parents, and school. When someone goes awry and they need to, they need a little come back to the real world. When a student goes awry and goes a little too far, we need to work together with the social emotional segment of our world, our school world, to make sure that the student comes first and we're doing the right thing for the student.
Ms. Pullano?
So I don't think that the school district should be responsible for monitoring the children's social media. But we do play a role in educating them, and we do that now. We do it already. It's incorporated into the health curriculum. For example, sorry about that. For example, at the lower grades right now, the health curriculum is based on the Great Body Shop, and we're also bringing in a new health teacher next year to support the elementary schools. And we're enhancing the Great Body Shop curriculum. And this is precisely the type of thing that should be addressed in our enhanced curriculum. At the secondary school, we have College 101, where seniors take part in, I think it's like a half-a-day program, and many topics are discussed to keep them safe and knowledgeable when they go off to college. And this is a topic that is touched upon. Another instance is with our student athlete leadership team in conjunction with CASA. There is programming to help our students and to guide our students and to teach our students to make the right choices so that they stay happy and healthy. So I think, yes, it's our duty to educate them and to give them the tools so they can make those smart choices, and we do that.
Ms. Royce?
Yeah, so I think this is a hot topic right now because I believe the Supreme Court is about to hear a case about a student who was disciplined, thrown off a cheerleading team for something she had posted on social media outside of school. And it's going to be interesting to watch because certainly we are looking at walking a fine line on what our schools are able to discipline or our children for, and what we as parents should be responsible to monitor. And I think that there's a difference between what students put on social media about themselves, whether it's appropriate or not, and what's happening in their lives, or something they might put on social media that might be considered threatening to somebody else, or make somebody at school feel like socially or emotionally they are also being threatened or bullied. So, this fine line is being walked. I'll tell you, I worked very closely on the administration, and the majority of issues we dealt with social media were not ones that we saw as an administration, but it was ones that other parents had brought to us to say, did you see so-and-so put this on social media? And so, of course, I think that the school plays a role in educating students on healthy online behavior. But I think that the reach of the school really goes as far as to keep their kids within the school day safe and protect them from any bullying that might go on, not necessarily what they're putting online that is not related to school or other people within the school building.
Last question, beginning with you, Mr. Prinzo, and then we'll take closing statements. Where do you stand on changing the mascot and the name from the teams from Manhasset Indians to something else?
That's a great question. That's been a hot topic, and the board has already apologized for not taking that question up. Quite frankly, just getting the building open lately has, at one point in time was more important than worrying about dealing with the mascot issue. Not that it's not important, but education came first. I will say there is a very large contingent of folks who feel very strongly about changing the name of the mascot. I will also say that there are a very large contingent of people who feel very strongly about not changing the name of the mascot, that they've gone to school here and they grew up with the term, the Manhasset Indians. Manhasset is an Indian name, by the way. I'm sure everybody knows that. So the community is kind of in the halfway point, okay? I do think at some point we will have to follow suit with, with regular sports where those kind of terms have worked their way out of our vernacular. And, we will probably follow suit with the rest of the sports world and do that. But that's my personal opinion. I'm not prejudging that. As one of 5 people who will vote on the topic, we will have a session about it. People will speak to it and we'll vote accordingly.
Ms. Pullano.
Thank you. So we had a very productive meeting with local tribal representatives. That was I want to say maybe it was in the fall, early fall. There were a number of people on there. Many people felt that the Indian symbol was degrading to Native Americans, and other people felt that it was a symbol of pride and reverence. But what was most interesting was what the local tribal representatives had to say when they voiced their opinion. First, I have to say they were absolutely elated to be part of the conversation. They were so happy to have the opportunity to have their voices heard and their culture celebrated. And their biggest fear was that of being erased. They didn't want their voices permanently silenced, as has happened throughout history, and they saw this as an opportunity to make sure that they were not erased. That really resonated with me. I thought it was a very powerful statement. So yes, I support the tribal representatives and their desire to not be erased.
Ms. Royce?
I just went back recently and watched the Board of Education meeting where the 5 tribes were represented to get a better understanding of where we stand as a community. And I first would just like to say that there was a lot of younger members of our community who were incredibly articulate about how they felt this mascot did not represent what they wanted it to. But I do have to say that I don't think as a community we are ready to make the decision. I listened to what the leaders of the 5 tribes had to say, and they wanted us to pause and they wanted us to have a discussion about the history of the Indians in Manhasset and why we want to honor them and what we can do to honor them. They weren't ready to commit to removing the Indian or keeping it. They wanted to educate us, and they wanted us to sit down with each other and have the roundtable discussion, including representation from the Indians, representation from people who are opposed to having it as our mascot, and representations from people who wanted to keep it. And I think that discussion has yet to happen. I think it's definitely something that as we come out of dealing with what has happened in COVID, we need to address. And if I am elected, I look forward to participating in those conversations and down the road, making a decision about what we should do.
Mr. BOE.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all anticipated this question was coming, didn't know it was going to be the grand finale. As I've traveled around the community, this issue comes up regularly. It's not only controversial, but people are passionate on both sides. On one side, you have people who have been here for generations who literally have sweatshirts with the Indian that they want to pass down to their kids. They have incredible memories of their high school years, and they feel that there's a nostalgia and tradition. And to be honest with you, a part of the allure of coming to Manhasset was that sense of tradition and community. So I understand that. On the other side, you have people who are equally passionate and vocal. They don't want to be on the wrong side of history. Again, they mentioned that Manhasset was forced by federal court order 8 years after Brown v. Board of Education to desegregate their schools. They see what's happening with sports teams moving away from the Indian as a mascot and name, and they just don't want Manhasset to be known again for being late to the learning curve. I hear them as well. I think the board is doing an exceptionally good job on a difficult conversation. They're providing a forum for both sides. They're leading by listening and trying to, wherever possible, find common ground. They're giving space for this issue to permeate and for both sides to listen to each other and see if they can't find something in the other side. I think that's good leadership, and I'm glad that the board is doing it. I know the process has slowed down a little bit since it started, but I'm sure I'll be picking up again soon, and I look forward to becoming part of the conversation as a community member or a future board member.
And with that, the question and answer portion is concluded of the forum. It's now time for closing statements. I'll remind you there are 2 minutes. Mr. BOE, we'll begin with you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to the League for this forum. As community leaders, we need to set an example for our children of the type of society we want to be. We need to listen to each other, not talk at each other. We should be building bridges, not burning them. Let us find, as Lincoln said, the better angels of our nature and work together to meet the challenges that face our school and our community. I've always believed the ties that bind us are stronger than those that separate us, and we must lead by listening. To that end, I've spent the past 2 months on an extensive listening tour of Manhasset with our neighbors from Spinney Hill to Flower Hill and all points in between. I've had the opportunity to listen to the concerns of friends, answer their tough questions, and share my vision for a stronger Manhasset. 2 themes have emerged. People value our school district, but ultimately believe there is room for improvement. And people want a school district that provides for all of our students. We need a board that fully reflects these priorities. We need board members with children who will be in the district for a while and have skin in the game. I believe a board member needs to be measured and reasonable, someone who can resolve conflict and also helps to create an environment in which conflict is less likely. I believe a board member needs to lead by listening. I believe a board member should be transparent, communicative, and accessible, someone who works to build consensus and develop community buy-in. I believe a board member needs to think outside the box and exercise good judgment. As you get to know me, I think you'll find that I embody all of these attributes. The opportunity to serve our community on the board is something that I'm uniquely prepared for. I think about the issues that impact our district and our students in my daily work, and I believe I can add to the conversation in an immediate and impactful way with minimal learning curve. I believe the manner in which I run my campaign, open and transparent communication, candid conversations, addressing hard issues while working to hear the concerns of the community, serves as an apt metaphor for how I plan to approach the job as a delegate to the board. Manhasset is united in a common desire to provide the best opportunities for our children and the best value for our taxpayers. We all deserve representation that mirrors the priorities we share as a community. I have the energy, the experience, the dedication, and the vision to be that representative for Manhasset. It would be my privilege to serve. Thank you.
Mr. Prinzo.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping us in line, Ms. Weaver. It was very nice having you here. I just have 3 quick points that I'd like to make. I'd like to just, every one of my 3 compatriots on this call, somewhere along the line, and it was a pleasure, by the way, to chat with all of you, somewhere along the line said how great Manhasset is. And that makes me excited. That makes me want to continue to do what I do, which is why I'm here tonight, because I think that Manhasset is a stellar school district. Just look at our ranking, not our state ranking, not our Long Island ranking, our national ranking. It's just spectacular. So 1 point, and thank you for the privilege to serve for the years that I've served. And in those years, I've learned that there's 3 important things that as a board member I have to do. The first thing I have to do is every decision I make, if it's about a student, the student wins. The student always wins. It's not about the budget. There's always money in the budget. We can always move money around in the budget. If we need to do something for the student, that's who wins, period, okay? I also feel I bring an independence to the table. Yes, my children have graduated from Manhasset schools. I still know all the teachers in all the buildings, and that independence is very important because it allows me to make a decision intelligently and away from any swaying. And I do feel I bring a lot of experience to the table, and that experience is very important to me. And the last point I want to make is a board of education is a very gentle and delicate thing. It has fiduciary responsibility, but its primary responsibility is to land somewhere between 2 worlds, the educators and the parents and the students. I think those worlds don't cross, and I think every board has a responsibility to the students and to the teachers. Sometimes they don't mix. Thank you, everyone.
Ms. Pullano.
As I've said many times, we all live in Manhasset for 2 reasons: the community and the schools. And we all have a common goal. We want our children to be healthy and happy. We need to focus on providing our students the best education we can provide for them. The focus needs to be on academics, athletics, the arts, and activities, and helping them to grow to be resilient, empathetic, productive members of our society, capable of critical reasoning and independent thought. If I were to be elected to the board, I would be committed to these fundamental principles. Number one, preserving and fostering the Manhasset tradition of educational excellence, community spirit, and community involvement. Number two, enhancing the lines of communication so parent voices are represented on the school board and with district administration. Number three, full and normal reopening of our schools with a clear plan to support our students overcoming individual COVID learning gaps. Number four, transparency and accessibility to the curriculum at all grade levels to ensure academic excellence with the multiple pathways for success. Number five, uniting our school community and keeping the focus on education, not politics. There's too much at stake. Number six, our children's education is my priority. When they succeed, our community succeeds. It's the role of each member of the board to first and foremost advocate for our children. Board members need to be free of any political agenda and conflict of interest, either real or perceived. The community needs to have faith that they can place their trust in our board members. I have 15 years of experience advocating for Manhasset students as a member of the SCA, and I have 22 years of experience as a parent to 3 children who went through the Manhasset schools with very different needs and different paths. I understand what all of our children need to achieve success, and I am in touch with what parents expect from our schools. So please vote for me on May 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Royce? Ms. Royce, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I want to thank the members of the community who have already shown their support and who continue to be enthusiastic about what is best for our children. This year, more than ever, our world has faced issues that make members of our community emotional, that are shrouded in controversy, and that take a lot of listening, learning, and discussing to navigate. It's important to emphasize that our children's liveliness, their education, and their health and safety be the driving force behind our decisions. I consider myself someone who can consider multiple perspectives, who can communicate effectively, who can think rationally, and who will take the job of balancing propelling our district forward while being fiscally responsible incredibly seriously. I hope you can trust me to put the work in when it comes to research, to collaborating with other districts and other board members, and to question everything we do for our children to ensure our confidence is in our schools. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you over the next couple of weeks leading up to the election, and I can be reached through my email, which is available on my Facebook page. And I'm hoping that you show up to the polls on May 18th to cast your vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for your closing remarks, and thank you for a civil and thoughtful discussion. With those last comments, our forum has concluded. I'd like to remind you to vote for the Manhasset Board of Education trustees and the school budget. That vote is Tuesday, May 18th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Manhasset Secondary School Gymnasium. I want to thank you to my fellow league member colleagues, Judy Esterquist, Michelle Lamberti, Marie Bellin, for your assistance during this forum. And thank you for actively participating in your community. Remember to vote and have a good night. Candidates, if you would sign off, thank you very much. Mr. Prinzo, do you mind signing off?